This is Orange Nation Overtime with Steve Infanti and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime alongside Paulie Sibilia. I am Steve Infanti as we look back on a must-win for Syracuse last night on the road at Georgia Tech. Kind of mixed reviews, right? They led by 20. Georgia Tech cut it to 5. Syracuse still wins by 10. I still look at it as more positives than negatives from last night, for sure.
There's no mixed reviews unless you're nuts. They won the game. You got to win road games in the ACC if you want to make the tournament. They did it.
I say mixed reviews in that it certainly wasn't perfect. There are things to work on, like the turnovers. 4 turnovers in the first half, 11 in the second half. But Donnie Freeman was great. They shot it better from three-point range. They shot it better from the free throw line. They handled their business down the stretch of that game, and they pick up a double-digit win on the road in conference, which is never easy.
Yeah, and they did something that we were worried about last night. They were up 5, and they needed to knock down free throws. They got the ball to the right guy's hands, and they made their free throws down the stretch. They did everything they needed to do in a game that's in conference last night, and you should be happy.
Yeah, and Nathan George was the guy stepping up to the free throw line. 10 for 10 from the charity stripe.
A little loose, though.
But, yeah, 6 turnovers from him. J.J. Starling only had 2 turnovers, but he was 2 for 10 from the field. A couple of his shot attempts felt like turnovers. The backcourt wasn't great against Clemson, wasn't great again last night.
He also had turnovers that just were glaring. Like, he came out, he got in the lane, he tried to throw a pass over the top of a defender to Donnie Freeman, and it just everybody knows you can't make that pass.
Yeah. Yeah, both the guards have had some head-shaking, turnovers the last couple of games, something that they've got to keep their eye on.
How big are Nathan George's feet?
Because he dribbles off his foot a lot.
Yeah, it's at least 2 to a game.
We saw that backcourt violation yesterday that just should not have happened.
Does he wear clown shoes? I don't know what's going on with him.
All right, we had Eric Devendorf on our show today, and we're going to play that interview back for you right now. And we started him off by asking for his takeaways on the game last night.
I thought first half offensively and really defensively they played great. If you take that first half offensively, it'd probably be one of the best halves of the season. The ball was moving. They were getting out in transition. They were playing with pace. Guys were getting into the paint, kicking out, making good decisions. And then second half, it really, maybe 8 minutes left in the game. The effort and everything they did in the first half just kind of, I guess, went to the wayside. And Georgia Tech, they just played harder. They really got out of what they did in the first half. If they play like they did in the first half offensively going forward, they're going to be tough to beat because defensively, pretty much the whole year they've been pretty consistent. We could, sure point out some games where the effort wasn't there, but defensively they've been pretty solid. And but yeah, that first half offensively, I thought it was great.
Eric, you mentioned something on Twitter, and it was kind of glaring to me too. Is it felt like the ball didn't get to Donnie enough in the second half for Syracuse last night?
Well, yeah, especially when, Ndago, the guy who's really, he was triggering the run for Georgia Tech, he had 4 fouls, and I would have went right back to Donnie, not on the perimeter, but in that, elbow mid-post area and just go ahead, rip through and attack. He was doing a great job of doing that all game, getting to the rim, and, Ndago couldn't be as aggressive as he wanted to be with 4 fouls. So if they would have got to Donnie, and I would have just kept going to him, miss, make, whatever it is, each possession I would have tried to be aggressive at Ndago, and it just seems like they went away from it. And then I thought, honestly, Cayenne should have played more. I think that his first half was great. He had 11 points, and I don't know how many minutes he played. I think he played 18 minutes overall, and a majority of that was in the first half. But I think Cayenne is Syracuse's best pure scorer as far as, that's what he naturally can do really good, whether it be shoot the ball, get to his mid-range, or get all the way to the basket. And we've seen other games where in the first half he was one of the only guys really attacking, making plays, getting to the free throw line. And I'm not saying, you take JJ out. I think you could play him with JJ. I think you could sub him in for Nate Kings. I think he's better offensively than Nate Kings. Obviously, defensively, he may not be as good, but I don't think he's that bad defensively where you don't play him. And then even so, you got guys like William Kyle and Donnie Freeman back there waiting for guys. And so if they do, get drove by, it's still going to be a hard attempt at the rim with William Kyle there. But I think they went away from Freeman, and I thought Cayenne definitely should have saw some more time.
So that's interesting because I was going to ask you, how does Cayenne get more time? Because he's certainly producing in these first halves. We saw it against Clemson as well, and then didn't play a lot in the second half. So you think that the most likely option would be to put him at the 3 then? Is that what you're saying?
I think you could play Nate George, JJ, and him at the same time. But if JJ's not playing well, then you put him in for JJ. But it just seems like Red, he wants JJ in there. He believes in him, and rightfully so. He's a fifth-year senior or fourth-year senior, wherever he is, and he's proven that he could score the basketball. He just hasn't been playing, really well. So I think you can play all those 3 guys at the same time, and if not, then you have Nate Kings in the game.
Another guy that people have, has kind of lost his minutes is Sadiq White, and it's going to be tough for him, right, to get on the floor with the way Donnie's playing.
Well, it's going to be tough because he's not great offensively, and that's kind of where we're struggling right now is finding some offensive continuity. But again, going back to the first half, they did a great job of just like having pace on the ball. And when I say that, they were moving the ball and it wasn't sticking, and then guys were moving off the ball and they were creating opportunities, whether it be playing off the closeout or getting 2 feet in the paint and kicking it out. You've seen it a few times. They had a kick out to Cayenne. He knocked down a 3, and I think another time they had a kick out to Nate Kings, who hit a 3. But it's going to be tough for him to get in the game because he's not great offensively right now. Defensively, athletic wise, he flies around. I mean, he's great. So you could really find spot minutes, but until he can be a presence offensively as far as shooting the basketball or whatever it is, he's not going to see a whole lot of time.
Eric, you said a moment ago that Georgia Tech went on its run in part because Syracuse got away from what it was doing offensively, and that's something that Paulie and I talked about earlier in the show, that it seemed like Syracuse started to bleed the shot clock a little bit earlier than normal, right? And they got out of their rhythm. And I brought up to Paulie the TCU-Kansas game last night. TCU was up 14 with like 4 minutes to go, and they started to do the same thing, and they got bad, it was bad possession after bad possession, and Kansas chipped away, ended up forcing overtime, and then Kansas wins it in overtime. You having played for as long as you did, what is the right way, what is the right balance, I guess, in terms of like, I get the whole, you don't want to shoot in the first 5 seconds of the shot clock, but you also don't want to wait until there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock to start your move to the basket because you end up getting a bad shot. How do you properly go about trying to bleed the clock a little bit while not getting out of your rhythm offensively?
I think you don't want to get caught up into that. If you're up 20, then let's try to get up 30. The worst thing you could do is when you get up 20 is be hesitant, because that's when you start to make mistakes, and that's what you saw Syracuse do in the second half when they turned the ball. I don't know how many turnovers they had in the second half, but
11.
They were playing hesitant. Exact 11. So when you're playing hesitant, you make more mistakes. When you're aggressive, it just happens that you make less mistakes. So I'd rather make mistakes being aggressive than being hesitant, and that's what it seemed like Syracuse was doing. They were playing hesitant. They were playing side to side. They weren't attacking, getting downhill. We talked about they went away from Donnie. So if you're up 20, the worst thing you can do is become complacent. You got to continue to play how you've been playing, and then when you do that, I think they would have more opportunities to get to the foul line. You would have more opportunities with easier looks, and they just went away from doing what they did in the first half offensively, and that's why you saw the turnovers and Georgia Tech able to come back and make a run.
They had 11 turnovers in the second half, 15 overall. But, is it worrisome to you that 13 of those turnovers are from George, Starling, and Kings?
Yeah, well, again, that's the thing. Like, they got into, like, iso ball or pounding the ball too much. Look, when you get over half court, if he's pressuring you, get rid of it, and then, you'll get it back in that half court. But, when you're starting to dribble like that, it's more likely that you're going to turn the ball over. He just has to be able to get it across half court. If they're pressuring you, obviously you want to, relieve it from a pick and roll or just get off the ball. You know what I mean? And they didn't do that. But yes, it's when those turnovers are coming from your guards, those are your main ball handlers. So right now I wouldn't be panicking, but you definitely want to have a discussion like, hey, we got to do a better job taking care of the ball and getting to our sets and and running our offense and executing.
Having watched Donnie these last two games against Clemson, especially that second half against Clemson and what he did last night, do you change your expectations at all, Eric, about what this team can do in the months of January and February as the tournament closes in? Do you think this team is now better equipped to go on a run, given that he is back, or are you expecting this to be a team that's destined to for the bubble at best moving forward here?
I mean, it's always great when you get your best player back, right? I mean, whenever you're missing your best player, you're obviously not going to be as good of a team. But I think Donnie's just been a really good job of just being aggressive. He in the second half, maybe he was around the perimeter a little bit too much, but I think he's been doing a good job being aggressive, and then that opens up his perimeter shot. I'd rather see him get those shots on the perimeter where he's like trailing in transition or pick and pop. Not something where he's standing out on the perimeter in the half court and a catch and shoot. That's just not what type of player he is. He can knock it down, yes, but he's best when he's attacking the rim, getting to the free throw line, which he did a lot last night. But for me, I think their guard play has to be better. You know what I mean? We talked about taking care of the ball. Nate George has to do a better job of taking care of the ball. He did a good job of scoring the ball last night. I think he had 17 points. And then, JJ has to become more consistent. If JJ plays good, he's really the X factor. If he plays good, this team can go to a whole nother level. If you're not going to give Kyan those minutes, where he can, really, come in and be super effective. And JJ has to play really, really well, and for this team to go to another level. I said it to, I forget who I was talking to. When your best player is William Kyle, when your best player is Donnie Freeman, you're going to win games, but you're not going to be as good as you can be. Your best players have to be your guards, most of the time. And I think they can be, like JJ and Nate George. If those guys can be consistent, I mean, because let's be real, it's a guard game. Those teams who, win national championships, go to the Final Four, they have really good guard play. I'm sure we can go back and use with the front court was really good, but your guards have to be consistent. And I think if they can be consistent going forward, this team takes another, step up, especially with Donnie Freeman playing how he's playing.
That was Eric Devendorf joining us on the Orange Nation radio show. Next up for the Orange is Pittsburgh, Saturday, 1 o'clock tip at the Peterson Event Center. The Panthers 7-8 on the season, 0-2 in conference. They also have a loss to Hofstra. They've played a pretty tough schedule, though. They've got losses to Villanova, West Virginia, Texas A&M. They do have a couple of head-scratching losses, Hofstra and Quinnipiac among them. It's a game that, again, Syracuse, I think we look at it on paper objectively and say, SU is better, but it's a road game in conference.
Yeah, you hear that, though, and then you're like, how are they, a better win than Georgia Tech? It's weird, but you got to win the games. You got to win. You can't look at as Syracuse basketball players and coaches can't look at that. They just got to go out and win every game by as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, Pittsburgh just played Clemson very closely, lost 73-68 last time out, and prior to that, lost at Miami 76-69. I feel like all these games in conference are going to be close. It's just the nature of when you play, a familiar opponent in conference, especially on the road. Expect Saturday's game to be close, and hopefully Syracuse can come out with a win. One thing before we move on to lacrosse and Rick Beardsley, Donnie Freeman's looked great, and
yes.
you wonder how different that stretch would have been, like in Vegas, for instance, had he played. We'll never know because he wasn't there, but you brought this up at the time and you said, listen, if Syracuse finishes the season strong, maybe the committee takes this into account that Donnie wasn't playing, because they do look like a different team with him.
Yeah, let's hope so. And I got called a dope for saying that, Steve.
No, it was just the wording about it may be a good thing. You never want them to lose games, but I see your point that if they finish strong, hopefully the committee takes into account, well, Donnie wasn't there during their most important stretch, and hopefully that could tip the scales in their favor. We did talk some lacrosse today as well with our good friend Rick Beardsley, the four-time All-American. The lacrosse poll is out. The USA lacrosse poll released a couple days ago. Syracuse checks in at number 2, Maryland number 1. So first and foremost, before we we got into the Syracuse lacrosse season, we asked Rick about his new job. He's coaching high school lacrosse in Connecticut. Take a listen.
Last year helped out with, Darien High School, which has traditionally been a national powerhouse the last 25 or so years. And coach has been there 45 years. He decided to, make it his last year. He'll have 710 wins by the time the season's over, and I'll have 101. I just, I was lucky enough to interview, and I got the job. It's one of those things, guys. I'm still going to obviously, Tori and Viviana and Angela will still be here, obviously. And then I'll do like I did last spring and live down in the tri-state area. I'm obviously familiar with it. So it's really fun. It's good to see, the family I have down there, good kids, good community, great food. You could tell by looking at my face that I've definitely had a lot of that food.
Well, congratulations
Thank you.
on the new job. And,
but Jay lives in Darien.
Yeah.
That's why. So he was really excited. I actually
Gotcha.
passed his house on the way to practice every day. I did speak to him this morning at 6:30 because I was driving home from a clinic in Connecticut, and he was getting on a plane after calling a great win for Coach Autry and the Orange basketball team yesterday. So he was excited to talk about that and lacrosse.
Well, again, congratulations on the job. They're lucky to have you, and glad that you're going to be kind of splitting your time between there and here, because we love seeing you around Syracuse as well. Let's talk some Cuse lacrosse. Yeah, I'm sure you saw the USA Today poll dropped a couple days ago. Cuse number 2, Maryland number 1. High expectations, sky high expectations this year after going to the Final Four. Do you think that number 2? I guess let's start with the ranking. Is that about right? Is that where you think they should be?
Yeah, top 4 for sure. It can intermix in this day and age. If you're in that top 4, you're always in that mix to be, in one poll higher than the other. And, the one thing that Syracuse has, and they've gotten right, I think defensively, they're really strong and experienced. And I think offense wins games, defense wins championships. Maryland has obviously had great defense the last couple of years. They've always had a D-man of the year. Princeton had the same thing, Duke and so on and so forth. They've had real strong defenses, but I think it's Syracuse's year on defense.
What else are you excited about with this team? Is it having Joey Spallina back? Is it, is it the schedule? Is it, coming off the Final Four and just like the expectations in general? What are you most excited about with Cuse lacrosse in 2026?
Well, for me and the alumni and the guys that I'm on text strings with, which is many of them now, especially since Reggie became the women's coach, a lot of us talk a lot more from our teams. For me, it's the expectations. The fact that you're back in where you need to be and where you have to be in order to be Syracuse and to try and build that tradition and get those recruits. I think the expectation where they are is really exciting, at least for myself and for a bunch of alumni that I speak with on a daily basis.
I bring up Joey Spallina. Should he be considered the favorite for the Tewaaraton Award?
Well, yes and no. All right, he's going to probably set the all-time, scoring record, 60 points. I think he needs. I think it really depends with the pressure that he's had over the years. I think it depends on, do they win? If Syracuse wins a national championship, I would say yes. Just like last year, I think if they win, he gets it. I think you got to win, right? I think there's so many people that have been against him all these years that I think they need to see that satisfaction in order for it to go.
I want to talk to you about the schedule, if we could. And Gary Gate has always done this, right? Even when he was the coach of the women's team, even going back to when he was at Maryland, he plays the toughest teams and plays them early and doesn't shy away from anybody. 6 of the top 8 teams in the USA Lax poll are on SU's schedule. There's the long road stretch in the middle. Do you like the schedule? Do you like the makeup of it?
Yeah, I wrote it down, obviously. BU St. Joe's, they're definitely not going to be anybody that's going to, is going to bow down, but I think they're very winnable. The one thing I can say that makes St. Joseph's maybe a little bit more winnable, this is probably fodder for them if they see this clip, is that they have a new coach, right? Taylor Ray went off to Penn, so they're a new team, new coach, right? New time they're playing Syracuse. I think Maryland, obviously, is going to pose a threat, and then you hit that gamut, right? Then Penn, Hopkins, Air Force, Denver, right? Air Force should be a little bit. But, I mean, Syracuse, if they come out fired up and Coach Gate and those guys have them all ready to go, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're going in and you can consistently stay in that top 3 in the rankings going into playoffs, you really, with a schedule like that, you're setting yourself up for victory versus failure.
In regards to that Maryland game in particular, the fact that they've got them early in the season, do you like scheduling that game knowing that, it's kind of like the Bills and the Chiefs, right? The Bills are like, well, if we're going to win a Super Bowl, we got to get by the Chiefs. Not this year, of course. But, with Syracuse lacrosse, do you schedule them knowing that, like, hey, we might see them again, so we want to see them in the regular season when the outcome, doesn't necessarily matter, as much as it does in the month of May?
Well, we all know this. We're all athletes here, even Paulie in his own right, especially the way he swims in Oneida Lake. The big thing, I mean, the old adage, the good coach speak, is you got to, to be the best, you got to play the best. But I do think that a tough schedule gets you battle tested. But on the flip side of that, it can mess with you mentally if you lose a bunch of games. It can mess with you physically because they're battles. But you can't come in and be completely undefeated and untested into the playoffs. Because as we know, playoffs is a whole nother set of things, right? People dig down deep. Teams are beat up. Some last, some don't. There's a lot of different humans. And by the way, freshmen at the end of the year aren't really freshmen. So there'll be teams that'll have guys that are, maybe transfers or freshmen. They're not freshmen at the end of the year or inexperienced transfers. So I think, in my opinion, I've always wanted to schedule a tough, always have a tough schedule. When like my days at CBA, we scheduled really tough in high school. My days at Syracuse, we had a tough schedule. And at Darien here, where I am now, we have one of the toughest schedules in America. We play, I think it's like 9 ranked teams out of our 15 games. So, again, being battle tested come playoff time can help you or hurt you. But I do think it leans more towards the help you thing.
At the beginning of this interview, you touched on the defense. We saw Joe Filardi, play a role. I'm not going to say a key role this year on the football team, but he did play a role this year on the football team, and now he transitions onto the lacrosse field, which is the main reason why he's here, right, is to play lacrosse. What do you know about Joe Filardi? What can we expect from him as a player in lacrosse?
Well, I do know one thing. If Joe Filardi had stayed at Half Hollow Hills was the number one, at the end of the year, the number one public school in the country, he would have certainly helped versus hurt. He was obviously one heck of a defenseman if he's getting an opportunity to play in the ACC, and then obviously the combo of football there. Now, let me just say this. Joe Filardi, I give you credit if you're listening, son. You went in there, that's a tough place to go. Right? You forget how big humans are till you walk next to the size of an ACC offensive or defensive lineman. But, to give him credit, I think he's, one hell of an athlete. He represents, Syracuse very well. He held himself very well in that. He could have been bitter. He could have been angry, and he didn't. Now, let's see in lacrosse if he gets a shot. I don't know. I haven't had, obviously, practice is rolling along in a day or two. So we'll see where he ends up, because all fall he was not with those guys, I believe.
Lastly, before we find out what you have for lunch, because we always have to ask you, you mentioned that you've been talking women's lacrosse with a lot of your former teammates and whatnot, with Reggie Thorpe now in charge of the women's program. What can you tell us about their team this year and what you're expecting out of the ladies?
Well, I'll tell you right now, number 44 on that roster is one good-looking girl. All right, she seems to be related and have the same last name, but obviously, unfortunately, Angela hurt her ACL, tore ACL 4 weeks ago, so. She's out for the year. But I got an opportunity to watch the SU women's play a lot, obviously, because our daughter Angela's on the team. And, I saw the strides from scrimmage 1 in fall game 1 to the last fall game of where, Nicole Levy puts in a new offense. The girls get accustomed to it. They're playing in a different style. Reggie is a very different coach. He doesn't yell and scream at you. He's very passive. A new staff with Maggie working with the goalie still. A couple things that I saw that stood out to me. Guyette, the goalie, is excellent. She's very, very good. I think Syracuse defensively will always be good. Coach DeFelice does a great job. I think that, they're going to figure out that offense. It's a ball movement, men's type offense. But they hit the gamut, guys. I mean, they go Maryland, UNC, Stanford, Loyola, Louisville, Cal, Virginia Tech, Northwestern, Yale, UVA, and so on and so forth, and finished out with the ACC. Now, I know that schedule better than I know the men's, right, guys? That's just how I roll. But I think Coach Thorpe and the crew will do a great job. I've met a lot of Angela's teammates. Courtney McClay, the transfer from Stony Brook, a.k.a. Dino, we call her. I think she's going to come in and contribute and do a great job. And I think that, Emma Munchnick and that crew offensively will really surprise people. I think they're one of those teams that they're 11 now in the preseason, right, guys? We saw that. I think they crawl themselves up, and we will see if they can squeak themselves into a Final Four. Reggie Thorpe's been known to get a few teams in the last couple of years at the Final Four.
That's Rick Beardsley, the four-time All-American. The SU men open up the new season February 1st at home against Boston University. The women take on Maryland. Very challenging game to open up the season for the SU women. They've got the Terrapins on February 6th inside the Dome, Paulie.
You know what the longest-running entertainment show is on television right now, Steve?
Longest running, is it Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah, 1975 it started. Yeah, The Simpsons have been on 30 years, but Wheel of Fortune, 1975. The longest scripted show behind The Simpsons was General Hospital.
Yeah, okay, that would make sense. Soap opera. Yeah.
So,
how long have the Simpsons been
30
on?
years.
30 years, man.
How do they have ideas left?
I know, right?
I come into this show every day dreading it because I don't know what to talk about.
You're out of ideas?
Yes. And we've only been doing this 5 years, 6 years.
All right.
Did you watch a soap opera as a kid? Like, did you get sucked into
my
it?
grandmother did.
What did she like?
She liked Days of Our Lives.
Guiding Light I had to watch as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to visit her. Like if we went after school, it'd be like, well, Grandma's soaps are on.
Yeah.
Right, so,
her programs.
Yeah, her programs are on. So I mean that was very much an everyday thing, no doubt about it. All right, we got to go. We're actually off from Orange Nation overtime the next couple of days.
Thank God.
You will be working with Tim Leonard on the Orange Nation radio side of things for the next couple of days, and we'll be back doing this on Monday. So enjoy the rest of the week, everybody. Enjoy the game on Saturday between Syracuse and Pittsburgh, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Take care.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.